And welcome back to Subculture. Well, one of the shows that a lot of people have been talking about from this year's Melbourne Fringe Festival has been the show called Intolerant. And luckily for all of our listeners right around Australia, you'll be able to experience this amazing show now as part of the Digital Fringe from the 19th to the 22nd of October. So we thought to find out a little bit more about Intolerant, we would actually get the person responsible for this amazing show on the phone right now. Welcome to the program, Uma.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Now, Uma, like I said, a lot of people have been talking about this show. I was away for part of Fringe, but so many people were telling me I need to see this show. Tell us a little bit about how you feel about the reaction to your show as part of Fringe this year.
Oh, look, it's been pretty amazing. I've been really overwhelmed by people's responses. I think, you never know when you're creating something new, whether or not people are going to like it and whether or not people are going to relate. And I think the thing that I've really learnt from this show is the more personal that I made it and really kind of dived into some of my own stories, the more relatable it was for people.
Definitely. So tell us a little bit about Intolerant. What kind of show is it and what can people expect from the show?
Sure. Well, it's a cabaret comedy show, so there's lots of music and lots of jokes, and often they come together. And basically the show is about my experiences growing up dealing with food allergies and then also being diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which I was only diagnosed with about a year and a half ago, and how that's really kind of shaped my life and how I've had to navigate the world.
Yep.
And especially also how it's really impacted on my interactions with other people. So it's a kind of a cross-section of all those different things. And all the mishaps that have happened along the way, because there have been a lot of them.
Yeah, people don't actually realise how tough it is to live with allergies. I've got a very rare disorder where I find myself allergic to a lot of things as well. So I'm allergic to chlorine. So as a kid, I couldn't do swimming lessons and things like that. People don't realise just what an impact that can have on your life. If you don't mind sharing, could you tell us a little bit about your own personal journey and how it felt being able to put that into a show?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally empathise with that. That really sucks about having a chlorine allergy. I think, growing up, I knew I had some allergies, and particularly nuts. Like nuts are my biggest allergy.
Yep.
And over the years, it became clear that there was more and more going on, and I ended up getting more allergy tests done when I was about 18 or 19, and it came back with this huge list of things that I didn't know I was allergic to, that I'd been eating. Now, I spent a lot of my life eating things that were actually causing me a lot of internal distress without realizing it. I often tell the story to my friends and to my mum. I didn't know, when I was a kid, I was so tired all the time, and I realized looking back, it's because my body was in a constant state of protecting itself from what I was eating, in a constant state of creating, histamines. And I used to look at my friends who were outside, doing all sorts of fun things, jumping around and running around, going, how do they have that energy? And it was when I kind of started when I was 18, 19, and I got those results and I could make changes according to that I started to realize, oh, okay, this is what it feels like, to be normal, as it were, to be eating in a way that works with my body, to have energy again. But of course not being totally normal because having to avoid a lot of things. And there was a lot of time, and I know lots of people can relate to this, regardless of whether or not you have allergies or Crohn's. It happens to so many people where, I asked for help. I thought something was going on, and every time I would go and try to get help, I was told, oh, no, there's nothing wrong. It's just in your head. You're being sensitive. And that is a big part of the show as well, is acknowledging, that we also have to be our own advocates in a way.
Yep. Doing such a personal show, did you find it kind of cathartic to be able to work on the show, or did you actually find it difficult because it was so personal?
The second one,
Yeah.
it was definitely both. Look, it was definitely both. It was definitely cathartic, and especially there are one or two songs that particularly hit home, every night. And I know that happens to people in the audience as well, because in the run that we just did, it was a small theatre. You can see how people are reacting, but it was really, really difficult to find the right words for a lot of the show, and particularly that song that I just mentioned that was particularly cathartic, which is an original song called "Is It Any Wonder?" That was a particularly difficult one to write because it was so emotional, and I had to really go to a deep place, and to a place, like what I'd said before about how we have to be our own advocates, and being told that it was all in our heads, for so long. You have to realize that in a way you've become accustomed to gaslighting yourself, telling yourself you're fine when you're not, because everyone else has been telling you that.
Yeah.
So, so that was the hardest part to write. And then also, Mum and I had a lot of fun, because obviously she's been around my whole life. We had fun bouncing around all the different stories that we remembered from growing up, because there were a lot, and trying to figure out which are the best ones to put in the show. There are so many that didn't make it in, including some of my favourites. So maybe there'll be another opportunity to get them back in somehow. But yeah, it's definitely been cathartic, but also it was more difficult than I expected to write.
Yeah. So I'll touch on the tracks and the music that's in the show a little bit later on, but I wanted to ask you as well, of course, you're trained in opera, but everyone is talking about this show, about how it melds comedy and everything all into the show. When did you make that decision? Because you are trained in opera, when did you make the decision to kind of take that challenge on of delivering something comedic as well?
I think I have always lent into comedy, for a really long time. When I was 18, I got to see a friend of mine do a cabaret performance, and I remember thinking, oh, this is what I want to do, because you can bring in everything, all the different things that I love about theatre and about music. You can do that in one place. And even when I wrote some original music that I released as an album, probably 8 or 9 years ago now, there was comedy even in those songs, even though they weren't meant to be, comedy songs. I've always lent into that humour, I think, as a way to move through difficult things. And I think we also know that comedy sometimes is a way to deflect from painful things as well. We use that with other people to not kind of get into the depth of everything, and I think that's a really useful thing for us to be aware of. And then to use that in a show context, humour allows people to open up and to come into the spaces with you as well that are more difficult. It's a really useful tool. So I don't know if I have an answer for when the decision was made or how that was made, because I feel like it's just something that has been part of the way I've viewed the world for a long time and wanted to kind of put into whatever I create. I think humour is really important.
And you mentioned before about how tough it was to pick the tracks, and of course, apart from your original music, there's also music in there from Pirates of Penzance. There's a Wiggles track in there as well. How difficult was that for you to sit down and say, I want this track? And as you mentioned before, you had a list of tracks that you couldn't use. Are you hoping to use them further down the track at some stage?
So I'm really happy with where we've ended up with the pieces. There's only one piece that I'm considering swapping out. It works in the context of the show, but I think, we could reshape that particular track. I had originally planned to do a lot more covers of other people's work, but as the show kind of developed, we decided it was better to write our own or bring in some other things. So it's a mix of, as you said, there's Pirates of Penzance, there's pop parody, which is mostly original stuff for the pop parody, and then we've got some opera in there as well, and as you mentioned, the Wiggle songs. I think the Wiggle songs, it's just so fun being able to have that juxtaposition between opera and Wiggles. People are not expecting it. The Wiggles come in at a really poignant part of the show, and that's how we break the tension and break the mood and shift things into a new space, and so effective for that. So effective.
Uma, I talked before about how many people have been talking about this show and saying this is a show to go and see, but have you had many people come up to you after the show and talk to you about their own personal journeys with allergies as well?
I've had a few. I've actually had more from the Crohn's side. I think we're in a lucky space in Australia these days. It certainly wasn't quite like this when I was a kid, but certainly these days people are a lot more aware of allergies than they used to be. So definitely there's a lot to learn still in that space, but people were particularly touched by having the representation of the Crohn's stuff too, because that's something that is much less talked about, you know, and obviously Crohn's is not the only form of inflammatory bowel disease. Ulcerative colitis is the other main one. But I think, you know, the thing about the allergies is that I have so many that I don't think I've had anyone in the audience who's had that many.
Yeah.
But they can see their experiences reflected back, which is a really, you know, a really nice thing that I've been able to connect with people on. There have been a couple of nights, because there is a small portion of audience interaction around asking people if they've got allergies. There have been a couple of nights where there's not been anyone in the audience with allergies.
Oh, wow.
Who are these normies coming to my show? It's amazing. So that's been kind of fun to see that even if people are not affected by these things, they've still been willing to come and check it out. Because, you know, I think it's relatable for anyone.
Definitely. Now, for all of our listeners out there, if you do want to check out Intolerant, you'll be able to get it as part of Digital Fringe. It is available from the 19th to the 22nd of October, and we will put up a link on our website, subcultureentertainment.com, where you will be able to purchase your ticket to be able to see Intolerant as part of Digital Fringe. Uma, to finish off, what would you like to say to people out there who are about to sit down and watch Intolerant in their own home now with Digital Fringe?
I think, you know, you're going to have the best seats in the house. You're going to have front row seats, being able to sit on your own couch. But just, you know, I hope you have fun, and I hope you get to come along on this romp of a journey, and then you're going to get to see what it's like to be living with these things as well. Yeah, it's a really fun show, and I really look forward to hearing what your audience think.